Commander Taeho Kim stood in the Great Hall of the Nexus Prime Station. The ceiling stretched high above him, covered with stars that seemed to move and dance. Around him sat creatures from across the galaxy. Some had scales that shined like metal. Others floated in glass tanks filled with strange gases. A few looked almost human, but their eyes glowed with colors that hurt to look at. Taeho wore his best uniform. The dark blue fabric felt heavy on his shoulders. Next to him sat Miran Park, Earth's top diplomat. Her black hair was pulled back, tight, and she held a small device that recorded everything said in the Great Hall. On his other side, Dongwu Li checked his military reports one more time. His weathered face showed no fear, but Taeho knew the older man was worried. The three humans were alone among hundreds of alien beings. They had traveled for months to reach this place. Earth's government had sent them to speak for all of humanity at the Galactic Council's yearly meeting. It was supposed to be a simple visit. They would listen to the other species talk about trade and borders, then they would return home with news about the galaxy. But something felt wrong today. The aliens whispered among themselves more than usual. Many kept looking at the humans with what seemed like pity. Others would not look at them at all. At the center of the Great Hall, a massive figure rose from his throne. Emperor Kethnos of the Veltar Empire was 3 times taller than any human. His body was covered in black armor that seemed to eat light. Tubes and wires ran from his head to his back, connecting to machines that kept him alive. His face was hidden behind a mask, but his voice boomed across the hall without any effort. "Representatives of the galaxy," the Emperor said, his words making the air itself shake. "Today we address a problem that has gone on too long. The species called humans have spread beyond their homeworld. They build colonies where they should not. They ask questions they should not ask. They fight when they should bow down." Taeho felt his heart speed up. This was not what they had expected. Miran touched his arm gently, telling him to stay calm. Around the hall, the alien representatives remained silent. No one spoke up to defend humanity. "The humans are young and foolish," Emperor Kethnos continued. "They do not understand the way things work in this galaxy. For 1 million years, the Veltar Empire has kept peace among the stars. We decide who lives where. We decide who trades with whom. We decide who has the right to spread across space." The Emperor stepped down from his throne. Each footstep sounded like thunder. "Today, I give humanity a choice. You will leave all your colonies beyond your home system. Your people will come to our re-education centers. There you will learn to be proper members of galactic society. You will learn to follow orders without question." Taeho stood up slowly. His chair made a small sound that seemed very loud in the quiet hall. Every eye in the room turned to look at him. He could feel the weight of their stares, but he kept his voice steady. "Emperor Kethnos," he said, his words carrying across the great space, "we thank you for your offer, but humanity must refuse. Our colonies are our homes. Our people are free. We will not abandon them, and we will not submit to re-education." The silence that followed felt thick enough to cut. Then Emperor Kethnos began to laugh. The sound was terrible, like metal scraping against stone. Other Veltar in the hall joined in, their mechanical voices creating a chorus of mockery. "You refuse?" the Emperor said, still laughing. "You primitive creatures think you have a choice? We have conquered species far more advanced than yours. We have destroyed civilizations that had weapons you cannot even imagine. What makes you think you are special?" Around the hall, representatives from other species looked down at their hands or stared at the walls. The floating Zephyrians dimmed their lights. The massive thornbacks pulled their heads into their shells. The crystalline beings from the hegemony turned away completely. Only one figure did not look away. In a corner of the hall sat an ancient, being known as Keeper Silas. He was old beyond counting, his species long forgotten by most. His job was to watch and remember everything that happened in the galaxy. His pale eyes met Taeho's for just a moment, and the human saw something there that might have been worry. Keeper Silas rose slowly from his seat. His voice was quiet, but somehow everyone could hear him clearly. Emperor, he said, his words careful and measured. Perhaps you should reconsider this path. There are rules in this galaxy, old rules, written in the blood of those who forgot them. Emperor Kethanos turned his masked face toward the old keeper. What rules could possibly protect these insects? The oldest rule of all, Silas whispered. Never challenge humans. The Emperor's laughter grew even louder. Superstition. Old stories. These creatures have 50,000 ships. We have 2 million. They fight with primitive weapons. We command the power of stars themselves. What threat could they possibly pose? Teho felt something cold settle in his stomach. 50,000 ships against 2 million. The numbers were not good, but he kept his face calm as he spoke again. We understand your position, Emperor, but our answer remains the same. Humanity will not surrender. The Great Hall erupted in noise. Some aliens gasped in shock. Others chattered excitedly among themselves. The Veltar representatives stood and pointed at the humans, their mechanical voices rising in anger. Emperor Kethanos raised one massive hand, and silence fell instantly. Very well, he said, his voice now cold as space itself. You have 30 standard days to change your mind. 30 days to see reason. When that time ends, if you still refuse our generous offer, the Veltar Empire will solve the human problem once and for all. Total extermination, added one of the Emperor's advisors, a creature more machine than flesh. Every human world will burn. Every human ship will be destroyed. Every human life will end. This is the fate of all species that dare to defy the Veltar Empire. Miran Park finally spoke, her voice steady despite the threat. We will carry your message back to Earth, Emperor, but I believe you will find that humanity's answer will not change. Then you are all fools, the Emperor said. 30 days. Use them wisely. As the Great Hall began to empty, Keeper Silas approached the human delegation. His ancient eyes were filled with sadness. I am sorry, he said quietly. They have just made a terrible mistake. But the price will be paid by all of us. What did you mean about the old rule? Teho asked. The keeper looked around to make sure no one else could hear them. There have been others like the Veltar before. Empires that thought they could not be challenged. Species that believed their technology made them invincible. They all made the same error. He paused, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. They all tried to destroy humanity. None of them survived the attempt. But we're not the strongest species, Dongwu Li said. Our technology is not the most advanced. No, Keeper Silas agreed. But you are the only species that becomes more dangerous, the more impossible the odds become. The Veltar have forgotten this lesson. Soon, they will remember why it was written. In the first place. The old keeper walked away, leaving the 3 humans alone in the Great Hall. Above them, the artificial stars continued their eternal dance. But now, they seemed cold and distant, like the eyes of uncaring gods watching the galaxy prepare for war. The news hit Earth like a giant wave crashing against a shore. Every screen, every radio, every communication device carried the same message. Humanity had 30 days to surrender or face total destruction. The Veltar Empire, rulers of most of the galaxy, had given their final warning. In the capital city of New Geneva, people stopped walking in the streets. They stood in small groups talking in quiet voices. Some cried, others looked angry. Many just stared at the sky as if they could see the alien ships coming for them. But on Mars, Bokyung Choi did not stop to cry or stare at the sky. She stood, in the largest mining facility on the Red Planet, looking at the massive machines that dug deep into the ground. These machines were built to break through solid rock. They shot powerful beams of energy that could melt metal. In the right hands, they could do much more than mine. Can we do it? Asked her assistant, a young man named Jun Ho who had worked with her for 3 years. Bokyung ran her hand along the side of the biggest mining laser. We can turn these into weapons, she said. It will take time, and we will need help from other teams, but yes, we can do it. The Veltar have ships with shields that can stop our best missiles, Junho said. What good will mining equipment do? Bokyung smiled, but it was not a happy smile. These machines were not built to be weapons. The Veltar will not expect them. Sometimes the best way to win a fight is to use something your enemy does not see coming. On Proxima Centauri b, the closest colony to Earth, Wu Jinhan walked through fields of grain that stretched to the horizon. He was a farmer, not a soldier. His hands knew how to plant seeds and harvest crops, not how to hold guns. But when he heard the news about the Veltar threat, something inside him changed. He called a meeting in the largest barn on his farm. One by one, his neighbors came. They were teachers, doctors, engineers, and shop owners. Normal people living normal lives. But now they needed to become something else. They think we will just give up, Wu Jin told the crowd of 50 people. They think we will pack our bags and leave our homes because they told us to. They do not understand humans very well. What can we do? Asked Su Jin, a woman who ran the local medical clinic. We are not soldiers. We do not have military training. We know this land, Wu Jin answered. We know every hill, every cave, every place to hide. If the Veltar come here, they will find that taking our world is much harder than they think. An old man named Hyun Sik stood up slowly. He had fought in the last war between human colonies 20 years ago. I can teach you to make bombs from farming supplies, he said quietly. I can show you how to set traps and how to fight from hiding places. It will not be easy, but it can be done. The children, Su Jin said. We need to keep the children safe. We will, Wu Jin promised. But first, we need to make sure there is still a world for them to grow up in. On Luna, Earth's moon, Yu Jin Song had not slept for 3 days. She worked in the most advanced laboratory in human space, surrounded by machines that most people could not even name. Her team studied alien technology, trying to understand how other species built their ships and weapons. The Veltar had technology that was hundreds of years ahead of humanity. Their ships could cross the galaxy in days where human ships needed months. Their weapons could destroy entire planets. Their shields could stop any attack that humans had ever tried. But Yu Jin had found something interesting in the old records. The Veltar had not fought a real war in over 800 years. They won battles by showing up with so many ships that their enemies surrendered immediately. They had not needed to improve their fighting methods because no one had been brave enough or foolish enough to fight them. Look at these battle reports, she told her assistant, pointing at data on her screen. Every fight for the last 8 centuries has been the same. The Veltar arrive with massive numbers. The enemy sees they cannot win and gives up. The Veltar take over without firing a shot. So, they are out of practice? Her assistant asked. More than that, Yu Jin said, her eyes bright with an idea. They have forgotten how to adapt. They do the same thing every time because it always works. But what happens when someone refuses to give up? What happens when someone fights back in ways they do not expect? In the military headquarters on Earth, Admiral Chang Ho-yoon stared at numbers that made his head hurt. The human fleet had 50,000 ships of all sizes. Most were small patrol vessels or cargo ships that had been fitted with basic weapons. Only 5,000 were real warships built for fighting. The Veltar Empire commanded over 2 million ships. Each one was larger and more powerful than the best human vessel. Their technology was so advanced that human weapons might not even damage their hulls. It is hopeless, said General Quan Su, an old man who had commanded human forces for 30 years. We should evacuate as many people as possible and try to find somewhere to hide. Captain Hai Wan Kang disagreed. She was young for her rank, only 35 years old, but she commanded the best intelligence unit in the human fleet. I have been studying the Veltar for years, she said. They are strong, but they have weaknesses. What weaknesses? Admiral, Yoon asked. They have better ships, better weapons, better shields, and more of everything. They think like machines, Hee-Wan explained. Everything they do follows patterns. They make plans and follow them exactly. They do not change their methods even when something unexpected happens. She brought up images on the large screen in the meeting room. Look at their ship formations. They are perfect. Every vessel in exactly the right place. It looks impressive, but it means they cannot react quickly when something goes wrong. You want us to fight a war based on the hope that we can confuse them? General Quan-Su asked. I want us to fight a war based on being human, Hye-Wan answered. We adapt. We change our plans when we need to. We find new ways to solve problems. The Veltar have forgotten how to do these things. Dr. Minho Bay worked in a different kind of laboratory. He studied alien biology, trying to understand how other species lived and thought. When the Veltar threat became real, he began looking at everything they had learned about the Empire's rulers. What he found was disturbing. The Veltar had changed themselves so much with machines and artificial parts that they were barely alive anymore. Most of their brains had been replaced with computers. Their bodies were more metal than flesh. They have made themselves perfect, he told Admiral Yoon during a private meeting. Perfect memory, perfect calculation, perfect efficiency. But they have lost something important. What have they lost? The Admiral asked. The ability to be surprised, Minho said. The ability to have new ideas. The ability to look at a problem and find a solution that no one has ever tried before. They can only think in ways their computers tell them to think. And humans can still do these things. Humans are the best at these things, Minho smiled. We are messy and unpredictable, and sometimes we make terrible mistakes. But we can also do things that no logical computer would ever suggest. The leaders of humanity met for the last time before making their decision. They sat in a room deep underground, protected by layers of metal and rock. Above them, the people of Earth went about their daily lives, not knowing that the future of their species was being decided below their feet. We have two choices, Admiral Yoon said to the group. We can try to evacuate our people and find somewhere to hide, or we can fight. If we fight, we will lose, General Quan-Su said bluntly. The numbers are too bad. Our technology is too far behind. If we run, we will spend the rest of our lives running, Captain Hye-Wan replied. The Veltar will hunt us wherever we go. They do not forgive species that defy them. President Lee Min-soo, the elected leader of all human colonies, spoke quietly. What kind of species do we want to be? The kind that runs when threatened? Or the kind that stands and fights for what they believe in? The kind that fights, said a voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was Commander Tae-ho Kim, just returned from the Galactic Council. His uniform was wrinkled from the long journey, but his voice was strong. Looked into the Emperor's eyes, Tae-ho continued. I saw what he thinks of us. We are insects to him, annoying little creatures that need to be stepped on. He believes that we will give up as soon as he shows us his big fleet. Maybe we should, General Quan-Su said sadly. Maybe survival is more important than pride. This is not about pride, Tae-ho said firmly. This is about who we are. If we surrender now, we tell the galaxy that humans can be bullied into giving up everything they care about. We tell every other species that might be threatened in the future that resistance is hopeless. Admiral Yoon nodded slowly. So we fight, even though we will probably lose. We fight because we might win, Captain Hye-Wan said. And even if we lose, we show the galaxy that some species will not bow down to tyrants. The vote was close, but the decision was made. Humanity would not surrender. They would not evacuate their colonies. They would fight the Veltar Empire with everything they had. As the meeting ended and the leaders prepared to return to their posts, Admiral Yoon spoke one last time. If we are going to die, we will die on our feet, and we will make sure the Veltar remember the price of trying to destroy humanity. The first battle was supposed to be the last battle. Emperor Kethnos sent a fleet of 100 ships to destroy the human colony on Kepler Prime. It was meant to be a simple task. The colony had only 2,000 people and no military defenses. Worth mentioning, the Veltar expected to finish the job in an hour and broadcast the destruction across the galaxy as a warning. Captain Seung-min commanded the only human ship in the system, a small patrol vessel called the Defiant. His crew of 12 had stayed behind when the evacuation ships left. They knew they could not win against 100 enemy warships, but they had a plan that no Veltar computer would ever suggest. "Remember," Sung Min told his crew as the alien fleet appeared on their screens, "we are not trying to destroy them. We are trying to confuse them." The Veltar ships moved in perfect formation toward the colony. Their hulls gleamed silver in the light of the system's star. Each ship was 10 times larger than the Defiant. Their weapons could turn the small human vessel into dust with a single shot, but they never got the chance to fire. Seung Min had filled his ship's cargo hold with mining explosives and metal scraps. As the Veltar fleet approached, he pointed his ship directly at their flagship and engaged the engines at full power. To the aliens, it looked like a desperate suicide attack. Their computers calculated the collision course and determined that the human ship would be destroyed by their shields before it could cause any real damage. They were right. The Defiant exploded against the flagship's shields and disappeared in a ball of fire. But that had been the plan all along. Hidden inside the cargo bay, protected by layers of metal plating, was something the Veltar sensors had not detected. A small escape pod with just enough room for one person and a very special bomb. As the Defiant died, the pod slipped through the brief gap that opened in the enemy shields. Engineer Huan Su jumped from the pod onto the hull of the Veltar flagship. He had only minutes before the aliens detected him, but minutes were all he needed. The bomb he carried was not advanced technology. It was simple chemical explosives wrapped around metal fragments, the kind of weapon that armies had used thousands of years ago. The Veltar had armor that could stop energy weapons and deflect particle beams, but they had not bothered to protect against chunks of metal flying at high speed. When Huan Su's bomb exploded, it tore a hole through the flagship's hull. Air rushed out into space, and emergency alarms began screaming throughout the ship. But that was just the beginning. Seung Min had hidden more surprises in the wreckage of his ship. Dozens of small drones, each one carrying its own primitive bomb, flew toward different Veltar vessels. The aliens tried to shoot them down, but the drones were too small and moved in patterns that made no sense. 3 more Veltar ships suffered hull breaches. 2 lost their main engines. 1 began spinning out of control as its navigation systems failed. The perfect formation fell apart as ships tried to avoid the chaos spreading through their fleet. For the first time in 800 years, a Veltar fleet had been damaged by an enemy they were supposed to be destroying. On the colony world of New Busan, Lieutenant Yoonji Lim watched the Veltar landing ships descend from orbit. There were 50 of them, each carrying 100 soldiers in advanced armor. Against them, she had 30 human defenders armed with whatever they could find. "They expect us to fight like soldiers," she told her small group as they hid in the ruins of an old mining station. Lined up in neat rows, following military rules. "We are not going to do that." The Veltar soldiers marched across the surface of New Busan in perfect order. Their armor could stop bullets and absorb energy blasts. Their weapons could punch through solid stone. They moved like machines, each step planned and precise. But they were not prepared for what waited for them. Yoonji had spent weeks preparing the battlefield. She had taken farming equipment and turned it into weapons. Crop sprayers now shot acid instead of fertilizer. Harvest machines had been modified to throw explosive seeds. Irrigation pipes had been filled with flammable gas. When the Veltar army reached the farming district, the attack began from every direction at once. Acid rained down from hidden sprayers, eating through their advanced armor. Explosions erupted from the ground where pressure mines had been buried. Clouds of burning gas turned the air itself into a weapon. The alien soldiers tried to respond, but they had been trained to fight other soldiers, not an entire landscape that had been turned into a trap. Every building, every piece of equipment, every innocent-looking pile of rocks was a potential threat. "This is not how warfare is conducted," the Veltar commander reported to his superiors. "The humans are using civilian tools as military weapons. They are not following proper combat protocols. Destroy them all," came the reply from orbit. "Show no mercy to these primitives." But mercy was not the problem. The problem was that the humans kept doing things that made no military sense. They would attack fiercely for 10 minutes, then disappear completely. They would set traps in places where no logical army would ever go. They would use weapons that should not work against such advanced armor. By the end of the day, the Veltar had lost 300 soldiers. The humans had lost only 12. It was impossible, but it was happening. The real shock came during the Battle of the Asteroid Belt. Commander Jae-Sung Park led a small squadron of human ships against a Veltar supply convoy. The enemy had 50 cargo vessels protected by 20 warships. The humans had 8 small fighters and 1 badly damaged cruiser. "Sir," his communications officer said, "Admiral Yoon is ordering us to retreat. The odds are too bad." Jae-Sung looked at his screens. The Veltar ships were arranged in a defensive formation that their computers said was unbreakable. Every angle of attack was covered. Every possible human move had been calculated and countered. "Tell the Admiral we are going to try something new," Jae-Sung said. "Something the Veltar computers have never seen before." What he did next became known as the Terran Gambit, and it was completely insane. Instead of attacking the enemy formation, Jae-Sung pointed his cruiser directly at the largest Veltar warship and accelerated to ramming speed. The alien commander watched in amazement as the human ship approached. "They are attempting to ram us," he reported. "Our shields will destroy them before they can make contact." "Let them come," his superior replied. "Their sacrifice will accomplish nothing." But Jae-Sung was not trying to destroy the warship with his cruiser. He was trying to create an opportunity. At the last second, just before impact, he fired every weapon his ship had directly into one small section of the enemy shield. For just an instant, the combined firepower created a tiny gap in the defensive barrier. The Soul's Pride exploded against the Veltar shields and died. But in that brief moment when the gap existed, 7 human fighters flew through the opening and found themselves inside the enemy formation. What happened next had never occurred in Veltar military history. Enemy ships were attacking from inside, their own defensive line. The carefully planned formation became a trap for the defenders instead of the attackers. Veltar ships could not fire without risking hits on their own vessels. The human fighters were small and fast. They flew between the massive alien ships like insects, striking at weak points that had never been designed to face attacks from such close range. Engines exploded. Weapon systems failed. Command centers went dark. In 10 minutes, the entire convoy was destroyed or disabled. 7 human fighters had defeated 70 Veltar ships by doing something so impossible that the enemy computers had never been programmed to deal with it. The news of these victories spread across human space faster than light. People who had been preparing to die began to hope they might live. Colonies that had started evacuation procedures stopped packing and started preparing defenses instead. But the news traveled beyond human space as well. On worlds throughout the galaxy, species that had lived under Veltar rule for centuries heard whispers of impossible things. A primitive race was not just fighting the Empire, but actually winning battles against them. On the ocean world of Aquatica, the Deep Sworn listened to intercepted communications with growing amazement. "The humans destroyed 50 ships with only 8, one elder said to another. "How is this possible?" "They fight like the ancient stories describe," the other replied. "Without fear, without logic, without concern for their own safety." I thought, such warriors were myths. In the void between stars, the nomadic runners held their own council. These beings had no permanent homes, traveling the galaxy in great fleets that carried their entire civilization. They had avoided the Veltar by staying always in motion, never remaining in one place long enough to be conquered. The Empire calls for all species to join them in destroying humanity, their chief navigator announced. They demand we provide ships and supplies for their war. "And what do the humans offer?" asked an elder. "Nothing," the navigator replied. "They have not asked for our help. They have not promised us rewards. They simply fight for their right to exist. Then we know which side deserves to win," the elder said quietly. Far from the battles on the neutral archive worlds, Keeper Silas watched the reports with growing concern. He had seen this pattern before, in the oldest records that only he was allowed to read. The impossible was happening, and the galaxy was starting to notice. For 800 years, no one had successfully resisted the Veltar Empire. Species that tried to fight back were crushed within days. But humanity had been fighting for 3 months now, and they were not losing. Dr. So Young Lim worked in a laboratory that did not officially exist. Her job was to study the patterns in Veltar military behavior and find ways to break them. She had discovered something important. The aliens made decisions like computers, following logical steps that could be predicted. "Look at this," she told her team, pointing to battle reports displayed on a large screen. "Every time we use the same tactic twice, they adapt and counter it, but they cannot handle random changes. They need time to process new information and update their strategies." Her assistant, a young man named Ki Jun, studied the data. "So we need to be unpredictable?" "More than unpredictable," So Young replied. "We need to be chaotic. We need to change our methods so often that they cannot keep up. I call them chaos protocols." The chaos protocols were unlike anything in military history. Human commanders would receive orders that seemed to make no sense. Attack formations would change in the middle of battle for no apparent reason. Ships would retreat when they were winning and advance when they were losing. To the Veltar, it looked like the humans had gone completely insane. Their computers could not process strategy that had no logic behind it. Battle plans that should have resulted in easy victories turned into disasters as human forces did things that no rational army would attempt. Major Kyung Ho Nam commanded a unit that became famous throughout the galaxy. The Phantom Brigade specialized in attacks that seemed impossible. They would appear where the enemy least expected them and disappear before reinforcements could arrive. "How did they get behind our lines?" a Veltar commander demanded after his supply base was destroyed. "There is no route through that asteroid field. Our sensors show it is completely blocked." His aide checked the tactical computers. "The asteroids are indeed blocking all possible paths, sir. But the humans went through anyway." "Through solid rock?" "They used mining charges to blast a tunnel, sir. Then they sealed it behind them to hide their escape route. The explosion signatures matched civilian mining equipment." The commander stared at the report in confusion. "They destroyed their own escape route? How did they plan to retreat?" "They did not plan to retreat, sir. They planned to fight until they won or died. When our reinforcements arrived, they found the human soldiers celebrating victory in the ruins of our base." This was the pattern everywhere. Human forces would attempt missions that should have been suicide. They would take risks that no computer would calculate as worthwhile. They would sacrifice equipment, positions, even entire ships to achieve goals that seemed meaningless. But the goals were not meaningless. Each impossible human victory weakened Veltar confidence. Each battle where the Empire's advanced technology failed to guarantee success made other species wonder if rebellion might be possible. On the waterworld of Deepmere, the aquatic Deepsworn held secret meetings in the darkest ocean trenches. For 500 years they had provided the Veltar Empire with rare minerals found only in their deepest seas. In return, they were allowed to live in peace as long as they never left their world. "The humans have destroyed 3 more Veltar fleets," reported their chief scout, a being whose bioluminescent patches flickered with excitement. "The Empire sent 200 ships to crush a single human colony. Only 50 ships returned." An elder Deepsworn, ancient beyond counting, rose from the council circle. "In my great-great-grandmother's time, we too fought the Veltar. We lost because we fought like ourselves, carefully, defensively trying to protect what we had. The humans fight like madmen. They risk everything in every battle. Perhaps madness is what the galaxy needs," said another elder. "Perhaps sanity is what allows tyrants to rule." The vote was close, but the decision was made. For the first time in 5 centuries, Deepmere began providing secret intelligence to an enemy of the Veltar Empire. Their scouts could travel through space undetected, gathering information about Veltar fleet movements and base locations. This intelligence found its way to human commanders through channels the Empire never suspected. In the void between stars, the nomadic Void Runners faced a similar choice. They had survived by avoiding conflict, keeping their great ships moving so that no one could pin them down long enough to conquer them. But now the Veltar demanded they choose sides in the war against humanity. Captain Nuri of the human frigate. Determination met with Runner Fleet Commander Vexhai in the neutral space near the Spiral Nebula. The meeting was supposed to be secret, but everyone in the galaxy seemed to know about it. The Empire orders us to provide ships for their war against your species, Vexhai explained. His form shifted and flowed like liquid metal as he spoke. If we refuse, they will hunt us down and destroy us. Nuri nodded. She understood the position the runners were in. What do you want from us? Nothing, Vexhai replied, surprising her. That is what makes your fight different. The Veltar demand our service, our resources, our children for their armies. You ask for nothing but the right to exist. Will you help us? We will not fight beside you, the runner commander said carefully. But perhaps some of our supply ships will develop navigation problems near human colonies. Perhaps they will need to unload their cargo quickly to make emergency repairs. It was not an alliance, but it was hope. The runners began experiencing an unusual number of technical difficulties that forced them to jettison supplies near human outposts. Medical equipment, raw materials, and food shipments that were supposed to reach Veltar bases somehow found their way into human hands instead. The real turning point came when engineer Hyunwoo Jeon completed work on the Prometheus protocol. His idea was simple but revolutionary. Turn every human civilian into a potential soldier and every human building into a potential fortress. We cannot match the Veltar in terms of military production, he explained to Admiral Chang Ho-yoon. They have factories on 10,000 worlds, but we can turn our existing infrastructure into weapons faster than they can destroy it. The Prometheus protocol transformed human civilization. Farming equipment became artillery. Manufacturing plants started producing weapons instead of consumer goods. Even schools and hospitals were modified with hidden defensive systems. But the most important change was in the people themselves. Children learned to build bombs in chemistry class. Grandparents practiced with weapons between their gardening duties. Office workers spent their lunch breaks training for combat. The Veltar had expected to fight an army. Instead, they found themselves fighting an entire species. The Empire's response was swift and brutal. Emperor Kethanos, frustrated by months of unexpected defeats, made a decision that changed everything. He ordered the complete destruction of 3 human colonies, New Sol, Armstrong Station, and the farming world of Green Valley. 50 Veltar dreadnoughts appeared in the 3 systems simultaneously. They did not demand surrender. They did not attempt to land troops. They simply began destroying everything that lived. New Sol died first. The orbital bombardment lasted for 6 hours. When it ended, the world that had been home to 15 million people was nothing but molten rock and poisoned atmosphere. Armstrong Station followed 8 hours later. Green Valley was the last to burn. In total, 50 million humans died in a single day. It was the largest loss of human life in the species' history. The Veltar broadcast the destruction across the galaxy as a warning to any species that might consider rebellion. But the Empire had made a terrible mistake. They thought the mass murder would break human morale. Instead, it turned every human in the galaxy into an enemy who would never forgive and never surrender. Commander Wei Jin of the colony ship New Hope was in deep space when he received news of the massacres. His ship carried 10,000 colonists, including his wife and 2 young children, to establish a new settlement in the Outer Rim. When he learned about the Veltar atrocity, he made a decision that shocked even his own crew. "We are changing course," he announced over the ship's communication system. "We are not going to build a new colony. We are going to destroy a Veltar base." His wife found him on the command bridge hours later. "The children are asking why we are not going to the new world," she said quietly. "What should I tell them?" Wei Jin looked at the star charts showing their new destination. A Veltar military facility that protected one of their major supply routes. "Tell them we are going to make sure other children do not die the way the children of Green Valley died." The New Hope was a colony ship, not a warship. It had no weapons beyond basic defensive systems. But it had something else. 10,000 people who were no longer afraid to die. When the ship approached the Veltar base, the alien commander was confused. "It is a civilian vessel," he reported to his superiors. "It appears to be requesting permission to surrender." "Accept their surrender," came the reply. "Process the humans according to standard procedures." But as the colony ship entered the base's docking area, something unexpected happened. The ship's cargo bay doors opened, and hundreds of small pods scattered in every direction. The human fleet appeared at the edge of the Veltar home system, like ghosts emerging from a nightmare. Admiral Sung Ho Bayek commanded 200 ships, the largest force humanity had ever assembled. Beside him in the command center, General Na-Young Kim coordinated the ground forces that would land on the alien homeworld. They had traveled for 6 months to reach this place, the heart of the empire that had ruled the galaxy for 1,000,000 years. The Veltar homeworld was protected by defensive systems that could destroy entire fleets. Space stations the size of moons surrounded the planet like deadly flowers. Each one carried weapons that could crack a world in half. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we are receiving surrender offers from 17 different species. The Thornback clans, the Crystal Hegemony, 3 runner fleets, and others. They want to join our attack." Admiral Bayek nodded, but did not smile. The galaxy was rising in rebellion. But this battle would not be won by numbers. It would be won by something that could not be counted or measured: the human refusal to give up. On the planet below, Emperor Kethnos sat in his throne room carved from a mountain of black stone. Around him, his advisors reported the impossible news. Rebellions were breaking out on thousands of worlds. Veltar garrisons were being overwhelmed by species that had not fought in centuries. The empire that had seemed eternal was crumbling. "How many ships do the humans have?" the emperor asked. 200, Your Supremacy," replied his military commander. "We have 1,500 ships defending the homeworld, plus the orbital defense platforms." "Then why do you seem afraid?" The commander hesitated. In 8 months of war, he had seen his forces lose battles they should have won easily. He had watched human fighters destroy ships 10 times their size. He had learned to fear the species that fought like madmen and won through sheer refusal to accept defeat. "The humans do not fight like normal enemies, Your Supremacy. They do things that should be impossible. Our computers cannot predict their actions." Emperor Kethnos rose from his throne. His massive form was more machine than flesh now, kept alive by technology that had replaced most of his original body. "They are primitives with crude weapons. We are the master race of the galaxy. How can they possibly threaten us?" But even as he spoke, alarms began sounding throughout the palace. The human attack had begun. Captain Dae-Hyun Shin commanded the communication ship, Voice of Earth. His job was not to fight, but to speak. As the human fleet engaged the Veltar defenses, he broadcast a message on all frequencies, in every language known to the galaxy. "People of the stars," his voice carried to 1 billion worlds. "Today we fight not just for humanity, but for every species that has lived under the boot of tyranny. We are not the strongest people in the galaxy. We are not the smartest or the most advanced, but we are the people who refuse to kneel." On worlds throughout Veltar space, beings who had never seen a human listened to his words. In the deep oceans of Aquatica, the Deepsworn rose from their trenches to attack Veltar installations. In the crystal caves of Gemtar, the crystalline beings shattered their chains and turned on their oppressors. "Join us," Daehyun continued, "and together we will show the universe that freedom is stronger than any empire. Together we will prove that courage is mightier than technology. Together we will end the age of fear and begin the age of hope." The battle in space raged for hours. Human ships darted between the massive defense platforms like insects attacking giants. But these insects had stingers, and they knew exactly where to strike. Every human captain had studied the Veltar defensive systems for months, learning their weaknesses and blind spots. The orbital platforms had been built to stop large fleets attacking in formation. They were not designed to handle small ships attacking from every direction at once. Human fighters slipped through gaps in the coverage and planted explosive charges on critical systems. One by one, the great space fortresses went dark. On the Yor planet's surface, Colonel Yun-Su-Oh led the first human soldiers to set foot on the Veltar homeworld. Her force of 500 volunteers faced an entire planet of hostile aliens, but they were not fighting alone. Across the world, species that had been enslaved for centuries heard the human message and rose in rebellion. The Veltar had brought workers from 100 different worlds to build their cities. Now those workers became an army of liberation. The humans are here. The cry went up in a dozen different languages. The age of freedom has begun. Yunsu's soldiers advanced through streets filled with chaos. Veltar police forces, caught completely by surprise, could not handle simultaneous uprisings across their entire world. Their weapons and armor were designed to maintain order, not fight a war against their own population. Colonel, her radio operator reported, "We are receiving offers of assistance from local rebel groups. They know the locations of all major government facilities. Accept all offers," Yunsu replied. "Today, every enemy of the Veltar is our friend." In the Imperial Palace, Emperor Kethanos prepared for his final battle. His personal guard consisted of 1,000 of the most advanced warriors in the galaxy. Each one was more machine than living being, enhanced with technology that made them stronger than any normal soldier. But when the palace doors exploded inward, the figure who entered was not what the Emperor expected. Colonel Yunsu-Oh was smaller than most of her soldiers. Her equipment was standard human military gear, primitive by Veltar standards. She carried simple kinetic weapons that fired metal bullets instead of energy beams. "You?" The Emperor laughed, his voice echoing through the great throne room. "They send one small female to face me? I am enhanced beyond your understanding. I have the strength of 10 normal beings in armor that cannot be pierced by your crude weapons." Yunsu said nothing. She simply raised her rifle and began firing. The Emperor was right about his enhancements. The bullets bounced off his armor without causing damage. He moved with speed that should have been impossible for something his size. His return fire carved chunks out of the stone pillars where Yunsu took cover. But the human colonel had not come alone. As the Emperor advanced to finish her, other figures emerged from the shadows. Rebel fighters from a dozen different species surrounded the tyrant who had oppressed their peoples for so long. "You cannot defeat me with numbers," the Emperor snarled. "I am perfection itself. I am the pinnacle of evolution." "No," Yunsu said quietly as she reloaded her weapon. "You are what happens when someone forgets what it means to be alive." The final battle was not won by superior technology or overwhelming force. It was won by beings who remembered that freedom was worth dying for. The Emperor fell not to advanced weapons but to simple determination, multiplied by the will of an entire galaxy. As news of the Emperor's death spread through space, the remaining Veltar forces began to surrender. Some tried to flee to distant systems, but they found no refuge. The species they had oppressed for centuries were no longer afraid. Ships that had served the Empire for generations switched sides or simply stopped fighting. Within days, the great Veltar Empire collapsed completely. 1,000,000 worlds that had lived under tyranny suddenly found themselves free to choose their own destinies. Keeper Silas arrived on the former Veltar homeworld 3 days after the battle ended. The ancient being walked through the ruins of the Imperial Palace, recording everything for the historical archives. He found Colonel Yunsu sitting on the steps of the building, cleaning her rifle. "It is finished," he said simply. "This part is finished," she replied. "But there will be other empires, other tyrants who think they cannot be defeated. And there will be humans to prove them wrong." Yunsu smiled, the first time she had done so in months. "There will be free people to prove them wrong. Humans, deep-sworn, crystalline, runners, and species we have not met yet. The galaxy will never again bow to a single master." The old keeper nodded. "The rule will be remembered. Never challenge humanity, not because they are the strongest, but because they make everyone around them stronger." 3 months later, representatives from 800 species gathered on the neutral world of Harmony. to establish the Galactic Federation of Free Peoples. Ambassador Tae-ho Kim, who had first defied the Veltar Empire at the old Galactic Council, now helped write the charter that would govern a galaxy without tyrants. "We establish this federation," he read from the founding document, "not to rule over others, but to ensure that none shall ever rule over us again. We pledge that any species threatened with extinction or enslavement shall find allies among the stars. We swear that freedom, once won, shall never again be surrendered." The document was signed in ceremonies broadcast across the galaxy. Children, on 1,000 worlds, watched as their leaders promised that the Age of Empires was over and the Age of Cooperation had begun. But the most important ceremony took place on a small human colony called New Hope, built on the site where the original colony ship had made its final sacrifice. A memorial stood there now, listing the names of all who had died in the war against tyranny. At the top of the memorial, carved in stone that would last for centuries, were simple words that became known throughout the galaxy. They broke the oldest rule in the galaxy: never challenge humans. But in doing so, they learned why the rule existed.